And then I'm also gonna include one more attachment. There we go. So the book that had been mentioned, and I wanted to include it just in case, people may watch my lessons and want to know. This is a book that refers to Israelites in Europe. And then there's also as you can see there, that's where we were scattered. Now bear with me. These are all the places that we were scattered. 500 BCE is when Nebuchadnezzar invaded on Judah and Jerusalem. Which is in this area. Camera's a little bit blurry. Y'all give me a second. As you can see, that's Abraham and Isaac. So you can see here, that's where Israel and Jerusalem are. And from there we were scattered throughout all these other countries. Italy, Spain, that's where the Moors were. And that's going to be in the next video that I post, or the next video that I click on. We were brought through Asia, up through Russia and Germany. And then you could see here, there's even arrows in the water, bringing us up by ship into, I think that's Scotland and Ireland, the Vikings. So the Vikings were not so-called white men. The Vikings were Israelites that were scattered into that area, being that snow-filled land. All Israelites. That was the Lord's court. That was the Lord's court. I don't know what the name of that painting is, but you can see it's all Israelites, and you have the judges that are posted up. So this is a resemblance of court. They're being brought to the attention of something. You can see Israelites with women of the lighter skin complexion, the other nations. There's an Israelite man, and a foreign woman. Israelite man and another foreign woman. Israelite man and a couple other foreign women. Israelites. And I don't know the specific subject of this photo, but it actually doesn't say. But we could see that there's Israelites all around these men. This looks to be around the time period of the Moors. And this is us being in captivity, if I'm correct. And this may be the Edomites or the Arabs right there. As you can see, servants on horses, while kings walk on foot. These are Israelites. So these are Israelites, and these are the other nations. You know, this may have been during the time period. Yeah, this was Christopher Columbus. This is what Christopher Columbus was doing. This is what Christopher Columbus was doing in the Americas. When he so-called discovered America, this is what he was doing to our people, the native Indians. So you getting ready to celebrate that pagan custom that's coming up in November. This is what you're celebrating. These are all Gad. That's all Gad, Issachar, Zebulon, and Reuben, being the Seminole Indians, the so-called Mexicans, the so-called Guatemalans and Panamanians, and the so-called native Indians. You know, all the northern kingdom. This is what they were doing to our people, and this is why we're so pissed off. So you Israelites who keep worshiping these customs and keep worshiping the so-called white man holiday, you're going to receive a huge ass whipping from the Lord by way of those thermonuclear missiles. And I think this is the Arabs. I'm pretty sure these are the Arabs that had us in slavery and captivity. It was before chains and shackles. You can see that they have wood across all of our backs, and then they're walking on camels. So I'm pretty sure this is during the time period of the Arab Muslim slave trade. As you can see, Israelites looking to be servants, and these seem to be of the other nations, if I'm correct. These are the Arabs that had us in bondage and captivity, as well as Ham. So there was some so-called Africans, Ham, that were along with the Arabs that had us in bondage and captivity. But they'll try to act like Ham was in slavery with Israel and Jerusalem when they were not. Ham was, they were not a godly people. You know, they lived like gruesome beasts, which is why when it talks about in Joel, Ham selling us to the Greeks. Yeah, Joel chapter 3 and verse 6. Also the people of Judah and the people of Jerusalem you have sold to the Greeks, that they may remove them far from their borders. This is during the time period that we were dwelling in West Africa. They sold us to the Greeks, being the so-called white men, along with the Arabs. They were selling us to the Greeks, and they were, you know, involving us in slavery and bondage and captivity. But Ham was living like, you know, brute beasts. So, you know, they weren't a peaceable people. So it was easy to be able to separate us. And you could see him right there. That looks like an Arab. Those look like Arabs. But it was easy to separate us because Ham was not a peaceable people. You could see what they were doing to our people. Throwing us into a hole. That's a huge ditch that they were throwing us into. You could see that woman there with the child. You could see that woman there with the child. You could see what looks like another child right there in that area. Young man or a young lady thrown into a ditch. Fire. You know, them burning our people, hanging our people. And this was happening before slavery as well. We were being misused and mistreated before slavery, being hung. This was happening during the time of Alexander the Greek. After his his buddies started putting us in bondage and captivity. This is where the term bonfire comes from. They bonded us together and set us on fire. This is where all these terms come from. Seeing this, I'm going to even start changing my street teachings from that name because I had been naming them campfires. But now I'm going to change that name because seeing this is where the term bonfire comes from. They would bond us together and set us on fire. So this is who you look up to. You niggas out there and you spics who love the so-called white man. That's who you look up to. They set our people on fire. They used to tie us together and set us on fire. And this is showing the speckled bird, the Israelite speckled bird. So you had Israelite men that were laying down with other nations, being Edomites or Moab. But when the baby came out, it'd be a Jake. It'd be an Israelite because the father is an Israelite. Israelite man, and that could be a Jake. Looking at her nose and the shape of her face, that could be a Jake. But her skin is lighter, and that's in Norway. So our people were scattered in Norway. Our people were scattered in Ireland, Scotland. We used to be rulers, which is what I'm getting ready to show next. But you could see them there with flavor, dancing, But it's showing her, I guess it's using the context of this woman here being a so-called white woman. But even looking at, the features of her face, her lips, and looking at her hair, this could be an Israelite. This could be an Israelite foreigner, a speckled bird, because her hair is curly. Now, this woman could be an Edomite, who knows? But this woman here looks like a Jake. This is Issachar, so-called Mexican Issachar. Israelite, and that could be an Edomite, who knows? Boom, Israelite. He's an Israelite. His father's an Israelite. His mother may be an Edomite, but he came out and he's an Israelite. And this is simply showing, people from the other nations or people that look like other nations, but, they could be going back to being, Jakes. Give me a second. Now the other one, stop that. Now give me a second. Yeah. And then go back. Pause it. Now that was from the book Nature Knows No Color Lines. Down there below. Nature Knows No Color Lines. And that's showing, our people being a speckled bird. And this is when the Moors ruled in Europe. Now the Moors are Jakes. They're Israelites. What does that say? 711 AD, when the African army, under the leader of Taqib, crossed the straits from northern Africa and invaded the Iberian Peninsula, Andalus, Spain under the Visigoth. And that says, y'all can read that, but I'm just gonna let it play through. And this is from 400 AD to 1400 AD to 1400. This is when Satan was bound for 1,000 years. So the so-called white man didn't have power. This is when we were in power in Europe, or the Byzantine Empire. And they call it the Byzantine Empire because that word Byzantine means backwards. So they called it the backwards empire because white people weren't ruling. They thought that it was backwards for so-called Negroes to be in rulership. But that's actually how the Lord created it to be. Expansion under the So not only were we in Greenland and Ireland and Scotland and all those cold countries, Norway, we were also in the desert. So the Lord created us to be at one, with existence, which is why our people can survive in any region. Straight up Jake, straight up Israelite. You may see some people in your neighborhood that look like him. Straight up Israelite. So this is when we were ruling. The so-called Moors. Islam. Moors. And you could see how it points up to Spain. So this is in West Africa. Coming from Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, coming from Jerusalem and Judah, where we had, been dwelling, coming over to West Africa, and eventually going up north to Spain. Muslim, Iberia, Spain, and Portugal. What did that say? Timeline map, 707 AD to 1492. And that was 1492 is the year when Christopher Colon invaded on the Native and Seminole Indians. And you could see that architecture looks different from what they had in Rome and in Greece. It looks different. It doesn't look like those those pillars that they got in Rome and Greece. These look different, Looks to be somewhat like a time period of the samurais. Looks to be somewhat of a samurai with his armor and his helmet and his sword. That looks to be somewhat of the time period of the samurais. These look like they could be Mongolians, but they're Israelites. You could see here all Jakes. And you could see it looks like he has some type of, they got guns. Arabs, Moors. So the Arabs came down and then the Moors moved up. So the Arabs may have been invading on, the Moors. And I'm pretty sure that was a time period of when they were trying to put them in slavery. Or trying to put us into slavery. See there at Jake. Look at him laughing. Yeah, so they became servants, if I'm correct. And then this looks like an Arab. So yeah, the Arabs came down and invaded on us. Moorish architecture. This is all Jake building. And this looks like one of those, this looks like where they get their architecture from all their palaces that all these England lizards be dwelling, all their palaces. Looks like they get the architects from Moorish, from Jake, from Israelites. The Dark Ages. The Dark Ages. 476, and we seen on the other one it said 1492. So, 918. So the years vary, but we know it's from 400 to 1400. And you could see there Israel taking on customs from these other nations. That's that foreign apparel. So I'll be right back. That's that foreign apparel. When Israel started to take the customs from these other nations and worship four-footed beasts and beasts with wings, this is what it's talking about. So y'all give me a second. I'll be right back. So as I was saying, and that's in the book of Zephaniah chapter 1 and verse 7. Zephaniah chapter 1, Shalakia, verse 8. And it shall be in the day of the Lord's sacrifice that I will punish the princes and the king's children, and all as such are clothed in foreign apparel. So this is that foreign apparel. Them worshiping gods and them making their own gods, them making their own idols with wings and 4 feet. And ultimately that started in Europe. If y'all can, remember when they had the sphinxes, that's where that comes from. Sicily, Malta, during the Middle Ages, who were initially Berber and the Arabs from North Africa. So, some of our people may be from Sicily. This is why you have Italians that got flavor. They know how to dance, they know the lingo, they know what's going on. They may have a darker skin complexion, a good energy about them, because they go back to being Israelites. Jake, look, this is a medieval knight. So a knight in shining armor, this is what it was referring to. Because that armor, when it was, put against our body, against our complexion, it would shine. It would have a certain glow about it, and it would, it would fit well with us. That's why it says that knight in shining armor. And knight, if you really think about it, what color is his skin? It's dark like the night. So when they say knight in shining armor, it's literally meaning, a darker skin complexion man in shining armor. That's where that term knight comes from. But we know that we're of the day, but simply referring to the skin tone, And I'm sure that saying has a different origin, but simply, looking at it, being able to piece together certain sayings. You could see them there playing chess. And this is back in, a century ago. Or Shalakia, 1,000 years ago. I don't know how long they would refer to that to, but I think it's Ekis. 1,000 years ago. Them playing chess. Jakes. An unknown portrait of a Moorish king in Europe. Yes, there were many black kings and queens all over the world. And there were numerous white caves. We was caves royalty. Golden trade of the Moors, West African Kingdom in the 14th century. And these are the names of these countries before the so-called white man started defiling the land, when Israelites were occupying it. This is what the names of these countries were. And this is Spain and Portuguese and France up above. Country of Barcelona. So Jake adds flavor to everything. That's why the Lord calls us the salt of the earth, because we give flavor to it. And in one of my other lessons, I had said, you don't use the earth to beautify your shit. You should beautify the earth. And that's what salt does to food. It beautifies the flavor of it. And that's what we do to the earth. We beautify it. And you could see there the names. Donizaz, Don Fran, De La Roe, and Dodam, something else. Conquered Spain, ruled it for 700 years, were responsible for bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages. Whoa, so hold on. They refer to the time period from 400 AD to 1400 AD as the Dark Ages, but it was really the time period of when dark copper color men, Israelites, were bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages. So before that, who was occupying Greece and Europe? Who was destroying the land? The so-called white man. So we were responsible for bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages. So we were actually the time of the Light Ages. From 400 AD to 1400 was actually the time period of the Light Ages, when Israelites were ruling in righteousness. And you could see her there with the gat, you know. So the so-called white man didn't really create all these things, although we know that he is, you know, the Lord's weapon. Even going back, our people were very, you know, well endowed with wisdom and knowledge. As you can see there, an Israelite man. Toledo. Chess. Look at that, playing chess. And you can see the musician, the artist there with their harp. Look at that artwork. When the Moors conquered the region of Iberia Peninsula, they imported their Islamic culture. And the city of Cordoba in southern Spain was looked upon by all of Europe as a major century of learning and the arts. And who was ruling there? Israelites, Moors. 600,000 manuscripts. Grand Mask of Cordoba. Jake, the Israelite. Europe during the Middle Ages. The fall of Rome. Look at that. The fall of Rome, 476. How did Europe look? The feudal system, the Franks, the Moors. Secular versus ecclesiastical. Monasticism, and pilgrimage. Church, knights, crown, church, king. So you could see that. You could see here they had a sense of order. You could see the king, the church right next to him, the crown, barons, knights. But you can see the church is right there next to the king. And this is where Christianity was somewhat put into order, but later on it was taken over by the so-called white man and changed into something that it was not. Black history facts: around 711 CE or AD, The African Moors introduced common bath to Europeans. They also introduced the use of undergarments and linen wear. And notice it says linen. That's an ancient fabric. Undergarments. So the African Moors is referring to Israelites, because we know the Israelites, so-called Negroes, so-called Haitians, and so-called Jamaicans were dwelling in West Africa. So we introduced common baths to Europe in 711 CE, AD. Look at that, head wrap. You see the woman there? Head wrap. You see how she's dressed? Head wrap. She doesn't have her cleavage out, she's covered up. You see how she's dressed? This is how our women should be carrying themselves. And you could best believe she has a whole dress on. Moorish conquest to Spain. Early in the 8th century, Moorish soldiers crossed over from Africa to Iberia Peninsula. The man chosen to lead them was General Tariq Ibn Ziyad. Notice the name Tariq. A good amount of our people are named Tariq. In 711, the bold Tariq, in command of an army of 10,000 men, crossed over the straits to disembark near the rock promontory. I was born as man. Okay. You can see there a family crest, and who's on it? So-called Negroes. This is where, and you could see that the knight in shining armor. That's where that term comes from. African Moors who conquered Spain and ruled it for 700 years prior to Christopher Columbus. Prior to Christopher Columbus's trip to the New World, and it wasn't new because we were occupying it. You had the Northern Kingdom, so-called Mexicans and so-called Native Indians and so-called Seminole Indians, as well as